This is an emergency transmission. Citizens of the world, please, make no mistake. The zombie apocalypse is near. Will you cower and hide, or join us and fight? We are Dezombified. So stay on point and watch your six.
Oh, you muted your mic. That you can still hear me. My mic's not.
Yeah. Our words are on the screen. Dezombified. Can you take those captions off there? We're live, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Hi, everybody.
almost caught an F-bomb there. I think it caught it, but we've had some technical issues getting here today, everybody. How's everybody doing? I didn't hear the music when it can't hear the music in my headphones, so I didn't know we were
live and we're on the screen too.
I didn't know we were live yet. Yeah, it's got our pictures up there, and so at least you're logged in the right account this time, Big Daddy.
Big Daddy RT.
Well, so how's everybody? Let's see who we got here. We just kind of jumped in tonight. Van Sheba, one of the best mods in the business. Dylan Clark from Creepy Unsolved. Go check out his channel. Chris Jarvis, Cookie Monster, and Jarble Milker. We'll talk about that at another time, maybe. Maraid the Mermaid, how are you doing today with your cotton candy locks there?
Yeah, boy.
We also got Dezombified, of course. Thanks for having us here, Kenny and Miss Stereo. The Boggs Official, good to see you. Pink Deadite. I think I've seen you here before, but welcome in. Glad to have you here. Fear the Great White. Always a pleasure, sir. Welcome back. Rick Brab, Pam Smith. So my regulars here from my overnight streams, guys. Thanks for following me over here. Jose, how you doing? It's of all my shows, all our shows.
Hi.
So I am Steve. This is Gemma. Together we are Stemma. If you haven't listened to us before, we didn't give ourselves that name. It was bestowed upon us by our listeners. Jim is in the chat. I'm in the chat. It's 13 past midnight. So.
Hi, everybody.
Marie, here.
Cookie, Dylan, Jose, Pink Deadite, 13 past midnight. Hi, Rick Brad, Fear the Great White, the Boggs Official, everybody that Steve welcomed. I welcome you too. Dezombified, thank you so much for having us. We have some really interesting content tonight and some really, really evil content. And as usual, some really messed up content. But here we are, and I just can't wait. I really love doing this show.
Yeah, these are great, and really, up to episode 7 already. That's hard to believe.
I know.
Never know. And it just, you get there before you know it. Like on my Ghost Stories at Midnight that I'm doing on 13 past midnight. Last night was episode 76. I'm like, have I really done this 76 nights in a row? And I guess I have. My goal was to surpass my October 2019 total. I did the 31 nights of Halloween. I did something every single night for the entire month of October, culminating with a live stream on the 31st. But I'm well beyond that now. I ended up on tripling it. So, but no end in sight. Everybody has a lot of fun. We have a crowd of about a dozen or so that starts at midnight Pacific, and people wander in and out all night. A very, very active and very funny chat over there, as Maraid and Chris Jarvis and some of the regulars can tell you.
I wandered in one night and nobody that I knew was in there except like one person. Dezombified, don't worry about it. Tech goblins, backwards brownies, it's fine. The BEK follow us around and dislike everything we do. There's two of them. There's two
BEKs. But every time you subscribe to Gemma's channel, a black-eyed kid finds a forever home. That's compliments of Chris Jarvis. Hey, Layla and Gaz. How you guys doing tonight? Hope Dylan's doing okay. If he's trying to go to sleep, then maybe this will help him out. Don't know if it's something you want to let Dylan listen to or not, though.
Oh no,
because it's parental guidance is suggested. I mean, it's up to you. My daughter watched serial killer documentaries and things with me from the time she was tiny. And
Hold on, let me do this. Attention. The following program is for mature audiences only. Put your children to sleep and be a responsible parent.
There you go. Well, Dylan, he uses our stream to rest and relax and sleep by. So I wouldn't fault.
That's right. Yes.
Yaz and Layla if they do let him listen to it, because he's probably not paying any attention to the content. He's just basking in the.
My son listens to it, and he's 2.5. So
yeah.
No judgment. I was just trying to be funny.
And my daughter, like I said, she slept with a Freddy Krueger doll and loved true crime and stuff when she was little.
Doll that I ripped the head off of and slept with the head.
She turned out okay. She's a professional puppeteer. She's done film work. She does stand-up and spoken word stuff. She's kind of like I am. She's a born entertainer. So
that is so cool. Why did I not know that about your daughter?
I've talked about it before when she was in the chat. I'm sure
she's done. Like, I knew just intuitively that your daughter did something really cool for a living because she's your daughter. But wow, a professional puppeteer.
Professional puppeteer. Awesome. She's worked on some films and things where she worked the monster puppets and things for horror films. Cool. And she was the assistant curator at the Portland Puppet Museum, but she kind of outgrew that, and she's doing some other stuff now. But yeah, she's all about and that stems from when she was little. She used to put on her own puppet shows on little webcam that we had and entertain people all over the world with finger puppets. So
yeah, my disclaimer was just I was trying to be funny. I didn't mean to be judgmental. Sometimes I don't think before I talk, so I didn't mean you're irresponsible if you let your kids listen to us. I was simply trying to be facetious.
Just letting you know, just in case this ain't a regular fireside chat or even a campfire story.
You guys know Gemma, okay? Sometimes the filter gets clogged and I don't quite
have to take a plunger and put it on your face.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm going to start putting a disclaimer on the beginning of my videos. All right, so we've got 16. We're going to go a little over tonight because we did start a little late. Because Google kind of messed me up too. The Google goblins kind of got me. I heard it Dezombified I heard music for like 30 seconds, but I have everything muted, so oh yeah, I can hear it. It's like
I can hear it now. It's a good level in the mix there from what I'm hearing, but I'm not hearing what the audience is hearing. I'm hearing what you're feeding our headphones. So, but anyway, tonight.
Thank you, Jose.
Real Evil.
Real Evil Killer Couple.
Killer Couples, episode 7. Let's just repeat everything that each other says.
Go ahead, Steve. You bring
us in.
Go
ahead, Gemma. You go ahead.
Bring us in, and I'll start off how I want it to.
You bring us in, and I'll start off. Okay, here we go. No, I'm just being silly. I'm hyped up on sinus meds, so maybe a fun show tonight. Anyway, be a little more serious, a little more evil-esque here. Real Evil Killer Couples. Just, what is it about? Is it true what they say, the family that stays together, or the couples anyway? Maybe so. We'll see. We've got 3 couples, 6 people total to talk about tonight. Hopefully we can get through all of them. That indeed they bonded through their love of murder, mayhem, and madness. And, I guess it's always good to have a friend and to be with somebody that shares your interests. Don't you think, Gemma?
Actually, I do. I do agree. I concur.
How would you broach that subject? Like, you ever thought about killing anybody? How
do you know that subject's never come up before?
Well, just saying.
Could make good pillow talk. But there's a big difference, even if for some reason you're fantasizing about something like that, right? There's a big difference between the act. And I think that's the difference between real evil and simple human curiosity. I mean, I'm interested in all this kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that, I wanted to. I could talk about real evil. I could talk about true crime and the paranormal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But to actually go out and commit a murder, or to go out and I think it's really something if someone can get, and I think in these ones it's more, except for one of them, I think it's more the man kind of convincing, and I'm not saying the women are innocent by any means. I'm simply talking about how I feel their personality would be a pretty, what's it called? I'm totally blanking on the word.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, that they're the influence. They're the ones that there's going to be one that's
Insecure.
more of a leader and the other's more of a
They're
follower.
picking on insecure women. You know, I need to be with these other women, at least in the one case, you know, and it's not because you're not good enough, but it's something that I need. And the woman is so insecure and just, I don't know. It's just a part of the,
Just kind of goes along with that.
With the territory.
Thing. Yeah. But then again, are you kidding me? Welcome in. Good to see you with us. Dylan, did we say hi to Dylan? Dylan Clark's
yes,
here. I think I caught him earlier.
I did not say hi to Bathsheba, Dylan, and Are You Kidding Me as well. So we're ready to start this?
Let's go ahead. Now, it's not always like that, though, where we talked about where there's usually one dominant partner and the other just kind of follows along or gets sucked into it, gets caught up in it, and then probably, you reach a point of no return, and, there's an old saying that you kill one and the rest come easy. I don't know if that's true or not, but there's one particular couple that we're going to talk about to start here. I'm not sure who was actually the dominant one.
Exactly.
Let's roll back the clock a few years, specifically, 1930-ish, 1932. I
believe it was 32.
The date that I see here. We're going to talk about a man named Clyde Champion Barrow.
You just completely got rid of how we decided to open this. You're like, yeah, all that stuff we talked about.
No, I was opening it up for you. And his companion, Bonnie Parker. Now
Bonnie Elizabeth Parker.
That's your cue.
That is my cue. You've read the story of Jesse James, of how he lived and died. If you're still in need of something to read, here's the story of Bonnie and Clyde. Now, Bonnie and Clyde are the Barrow Gang. I'm sure you all have read how they rob and steal, and those who squeal are usually found dying or dead. There's lots of untruth to these write-ups. They're not as ruthless as that. Their nature is raw. They hate all law, the stool pigeons, spotters, and rats. They call them cold-blooded killers. They say they're heartless and mean. But I say this with pride that I once knew Clyde when he was honest and upright and clean. But the law fooled around, kept taking him down and locking him up in a cell, till he said to me, I'll never be free, so I'll meet a few of them in hell. They don't think they're too smart or desperate. They know that the law always wins. They've been shot at before, but they do not ignore that death is the wages of sin. Someday they'll go down together, and they'll bury them side by side. To few it'll be grief, to the law a relief, but it's death for Bonnie and Clyde. And Bonnie and Clyde actually, tragically, in my opinion, because I kind of, not that I idolize their crimes, but, I'm big on them. They did not get buried side by side because Bonnie's mother would not allow it.
Yeah, I think it's a tragedy that they did. I've seen the death car it's in a casino in Primm, Nevada, and they didn't stand a chance. And I think they could have taken him, although they said they'd never be taken alive, and that turned out to be prophetic. But I don't know. There is a certain romanticism about them that is hard to ignore. And like I said, I'm not a big fan of any criminals, but they did. I mean, it was the time
I'm
that
a fan
it was.
Of criminals. I'm just not a fan of murder.
Yeah, it was the time that it was, and the fact that they were just continued to give the government and the federal men a black eye. That was the thing. They were like Robin Hood.
Well, that's how a lot of people saw them. And, Clyde did not start out. He stole something very, very small and ended up with kind of a long sentence. And he was the R word in prison. He was very young and he was in there with grown men and sadists. And they repeatedly did this to him over and over again. And he was in there for such a small thing that he should not have been in prison for. Nowadays, I wish that I had it in front of me what he did. I should have looked it up. I'm sorry, guys.
I believe it was he failed to return a rental car.
Yes, that's what it was. And he kept getting the R word from the other men in there, and it destroyed something within him. And that's the part of the poem where he told Bonnie, I'll never be free. because he was in a prison in his own head from the terrors he had endured as a young kid, a very young kid, in prison with all of these adult, horrifying men. And he kind of was ruined from it. And I think Bonnie, the whole bad boy thing, I mean, that's as old as time, right?
Yeah.
She kind of fell in love with him for that. She wanted to be a model, and she would send her pictures to modeling agencies, but she always got turned down. She wasn't much to look at, neither was Clyde, really.
But she had that attitude, though. She had
confidence. That's what it was. She had confidence. Bonnie played her. I love it. I was just listening to that song the other day. It was on something that I was watching, and then I went and put it on my playlist. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Love it, love it, love it. So I'm just going to read a little bit, and then Steve will actually share this one. But I know that Clyde, the reason they got away with so much is because back then, once you crossed county lines, they couldn't cross the county lines to arrest you. So they certainly got off to a rocky start. 19-year-old Bonnie Parker's husband was serving time for murder, and 21-year-old Clyde Barrow was out of prison briefly. Was it instantaneous attraction? Maybe. Shortly after they met, according to the FBI, Clyde was arrested for burglary. Bonnie smuggled him in a gun into jail, and he broke out, only to be recaptured. 2 years later, he was paroled, and they reunited. It was 1932, the Great Depression, the dirty 30s. The Great Depression was killing the dreams of everyday Americans, and the young couple, who never married, by the way, decided to hit the road. Mostly they were thieves, specializing often with other family members in armed robbery. They weren't the organized looters of banks like John Dillinger and his associates. A lot of it was knocking over small stores and gas stations to have enough to eat for the night. They committed burglary and stole a lot of cars. They were extremely well armed. Clyde liked guns, especially the Browning automatic rifle, capable of firing 500 rounds a minute with a magazine of 20 or 40 bullets, caliber 30.06. Shotguns and various handguns also came in handy because they did shoot people. Bonnie and Clyde are consistently credited with killing 13 people, 9 of them law enforcement personnel. This number doesn't include Clyde's first murder, committed while in prison, of a fellow inmate who had been R-ing him. Another prisoner, already serving a life sentence, took credit for the killing. Despite staged photos for fun, sources are uncertain whether Bonnie actually wielded a gun, let alone ever shot anyone. In addition to the aforementioned murder while in prison, Clyde is known to have committed one other premeditated killing in which he helped a friend kill the guard who had abused him in prison. Not Clyde, the friend. The guard had abused the friend. Clyde helped him kill him. The evidence is clear that Barrow's other killings were acts of desperation during attempted escapes or ill-timed confrontations over the course of Bonnie and Clyde's 2-year crime spree from spring of 1932 until May of 1934. Any is too many. Frank Hamer, former Texas Ranger, led the ambush that paid back Barrow and Parker with a hailstorm of bullets on a Louisiana back road. Hamer wasn't taking any chances on being number 14, but I gotta tell you, he said until the day that he died that he jumped the gun and should not have been the first to fire. He regretted it until the day he died. Bonnie and Clyde are perhaps the most romanticized outlaws of all time, and at a time when gangsters and bad guys were celebrities, they really stood out. No one knows who Al Capone's or John Dillinger's lady friends were off the top of their heads. The fact that Bonnie and Clyde committed crimes as a couple made them very special. Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker met in 1930 and later went on a 21-month spree. Once they got started, they tore across various southern states, leaving death and destruction in their wake. Yet the public was obsessed with them, this sexy young couple taking on the police and the banks, two of the most hated institutions in Prohibition and Great Depression era America. They were young, they were having sex, they were firing guns. But of course, there's more to the story. Bonnie and Clyde were real people with complicated and tragic pasts. Their love affair was more than a little twisted, and their crime spree wasn't as impressive as it's gone down in legend. Here's the things the movies don't tell you. Bonnie and Clyde could have been famous by more traditional means. While Bonnie and Clyde ended up becoming famous by killing people and robbing banks, they probably could have taken the legal route. Both were talented in more traditional ways. According to Bonnie and Clyde's hideout, Clyde had a, quote, natural music ability, end quote. His brother-in-law taught him to play the saxophone, and he also played guitar. It said he brought a little happiness into the lives of others sentenced to poverty when he'd strum the guitar around the fire at camps the couple stayed at while on the run. When one of their safe houses was raided, Clyde's guitar was left behind, and he asked his mother to try and get it back for him. She failed, but he did manage to hold on to his saxophone. It was actually in the car along with the sheet music when he and Bonnie were killed. Are you following along, Steve?
Yes, I am indeed.
There you go. You can take over.
Okay. I think they were awesome. I mean, irregardless of the murders and all that.
I think they were a great couple.
They were legendary. And I think their legend was a lot bigger than they were the story spread, and as it went from town to town, because you had a lot of outlaws like that, even predating them, the Jesse James, and then later on the Dillingers and the Capones and things. They were larger than life. And that's what this couple was, and why, and they've been, glorified to an extent. They're talking about in the chat there, the movie with Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty. And yes, that is the best movie version of their lives that I've ever seen. And I mean, we've often referred to ourselves as the Bonnie and Clyde of what we do. We don't kill anybody, but we do make killer shows and podcasts. So kind of works. Artie Morbid and Dante Sharp, welcome in, gentlemen. But there's something about that outlaw mystique. I mean, you still have that. You have people that, motorcycle riders and things like that. It goes along the bad boy image, and to have a bad girl too. When I was in high school, I took drafting as a vocational course. I actually wanted to take, this is going to sound funny, they gave cosmetology classes. I wanted to go over there because that's where the cool girls were. That was the girls with the leather jackets and that popped their chewing gum, and smoked cigarettes out behind the building, So there's that mystique of somebody that's bad, that's bad news. That's
that little bit of danger, that innate need in all of us as kind of human nature for that danger, that adventure, that excitement.
Yeah, there is definitely a thrill there. I'm going to go into some things here that you may not know about Bonnie and Clyde. Now, when Bonnie died, she was wearing a wedding ring, but it wasn't Clyde's. 6 days before she turned 16, Bonnie married her high school sweetheart and classmate, Roy Thornton. The marriage disintegrated within months, and Bonnie never again saw her husband after he was in prison for robbery in 1929. Soon after, Bonnie met Clyde, and although the pair fell in love, she never divorced Thornton. On the day Bonnie and Clyde were killed in 1934, she was still wearing Thornton's wedding ring and had a tattoo on the inside of her right thigh with two interconnected hearts labeled Bonnie and Roy. And that was another thing. That was very, very taboo in the 30s for a woman to have tattoos. So she was definitely a bad girl. And she also, like I said, wrote poetry. I think most people knew that. She wrote a whole collection of it. There's a collection of 10 odes that she entitled Poetry from Life's Other Side. And there's one, the story of S-Word Sal, a poem about an innocent country girl lured by her boyfriend into a life of crime. Kind of life imitating art, or art imitating life there. And 2 weeks before her death, Bonnie gave a prescient poem to her mother, the one that Gemma read there for your part of, the one there, The Trails In. And she also wrote a story called The Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde, or a poem rather. Interesting fact about Clyde, he might have gone a different route had he not been rejected by the Navy. As a teenager, Clyde attempted to enlist in the U.S. Navy, but lingering effects from a serious boyhood illness, possibly either malaria or yellow fever, resulted in him being considered 4F, having a medical rejection. It was a hard blow for Clyde, who was so prepared to go in. He had already had U.S. Navy or USN tattooed on his left arm. And indeed, like we spoke of earlier, Clyde's first arrest came from failing to return a rental car. This later much notorious criminal was first arrested in 1926 for automobile theft after failing to return a car he had rented in Dallas to visit an estranged high school girlfriend. The rental car agency dropped the charges, but the incident remained on Clyde's arrest record. Just 3 weeks later, he was arrested again alongside his older brother Ivan Buck Barrow for an even more farcical crime, possession of a truckload of stolen turkeys. You can't make this stuff up. Now, people know Bonnie and Clyde mainly from the movie, especially that one scene where Faye Dunaway says, we're Bonnie and Clyde and we rob banks.
We rob banks.
That's what people know them as, bank robbers. And although they've often been depicted as Depression-era Robin Hoods who stole from the rich and powerful financial institutions, they staged far more robberies of mom-and-pop gas stations and little grocery stores than bank heists. Oftentimes, though, their loot only amounted to $5 or $10, But it wasn't just the big, powerful financial institutions and banks. It was anywhere they could get some money. And something else interesting about Clyde, he chopped off 2 of his toes while in prison.
Yep. And it was the day before he was bailed out.
Well, serving his 14-year sentence in Texas for robbery and automobile theft in January of 1932, Clyde decided he could no longer endure the unforgiving work and brutal conditions at the notoriously tough Eastham prison farm. In the hopes of forcing a transfer to a less harsh facility, Clyde severed his left big toe and a portion of his second toe with an axe, although it is not known whether he or another prisoner wielded the sharp instrument. The self-mutilation, which permanently crippled his walking stride and preventing him from wearing shoes while driving, ultimately proved unnecessary, as he was released on parole 6 days later.
Oh, 6 days, yeah.
And not only did Clyde walk with a limp, Bonnie did too. On the night of June 10th, 1933, Clyde, with Bonnie in the passenger seat, was speeding along the rural roads of North Texas so quickly that he missed a detour sign warning of a bridge under construction. The duo's Ford V8 smashed through a barricade at 70 miles an hour and sailed through the air before landing in a dry riverbed. Scalding acid poured out of the smashed car battery and severely burned Bonnie's right leg, eating the flesh to the bone in some places. As a result of these third-degree bones, Bonnie, like Clyde, walked with a pronounced limp for the rest of her life, and she had such difficulty walking at times that she hopped or even needed Clyde to carry her. Now, I'm going to go a little morbid here, but at the scene of their murder, if you will, souvenir hunters tried to cut off parts of Bonnie and Clyde at the scene of their deaths. As we talked about, on May 23rd, 1934, a 6-man posse led by former Texas Ranger Captain Frank Hamer ambushed Bonnie and Clyde and pumped more than 130 rounds of steel-jacketed bullets into their stolen Ford V8 outside Silesford, Louisiana. After dozens of robberies and the 13 murders attributed to them, Bonnie and Clyde's crime spree had finally come to an end. With acrid gun smoke still lingering in the air, gawkers descended upon the ambush site and attempted to leave with macabre souvenirs from the bodies of the outlaws still slumped in the front seat. According to Jeff Gwynn's excellent book, and I've read this, Go Down Together, one man tried to cut off Clyde's ear with a pocket knife, and another attempted to sever his trigger finger before the lawman intervened. And the idea being, back then, stuff like that toured the carnivals and the sideshows and things. If you had Clyde Barrow's trigger finger, people would pay a quarter to see that.
Oh my gosh.
Quarters would add up during the Depression. Lawmen intervened, though. One person in the throng, however, did manage to clip locks of Bonnie's hair and swaths of her blood-soaked dress, which that's pretty creepy. Now, as I mentioned to Dezombified, I don't think I've said it since we went live, but I've seen the death car. This was following the ambush of Bonnie and Clyde. A Louisiana sheriff who was a member of Hamer's 6-man posse claimed the pockmarked Ford V8 sedan, still coated with the outlaw's blood and tissue. A federal judge, however, ruled that the automobile stolen by Bonnie and Clyde should be returned to its former owner, Ruth Warren of Topeka, Kansas. Warren leased and eventually sold the car to Charles Stanley, an anti-crime lecturer who toured fairgrounds with the death car and the mothers of Bonnie and Clyde in tow as sideshow attractions. Still speckled with bullet holes and blood on the seats, the death car is now an attraction in the lobby of Whiskey Pete's Casino in Primm, Nevada, a small resort down on the California border. This says 40 miles of south of Las Vegas, but it's not that far down to Primm.
We could literally go this whole time because I have so much more to say too, and I'm like, we might go till 9:30, guys.
Yeah. Let me finish this little bit right here, and then we'll take a break and then continue.
Yeah, I've got one more thing I just want to say that I thought was funny, but go ahead.
The saddest things, the whole go down together and be buried side by side, and all of the poetry and all the romantic outlaw stuff, they were buried separately. Although linked in life, Bonnie and Clyde were forever split in death. While the pair wished to be buried side by side, Bonnie's mother, who had disapproved of her relationship with Clyde, wondered why, had her daughter buried in a separate Dallas cemetery. Clyde was buried next to his brother Marvin underneath a gravestone with his hand-picked epitaph, "Gone but not forgotten." And boy, was that the truth. I mean, he did did they know that
I don't even think they could have imagined.
Almost 100 years later that they'd still be talked about and well known? I don't think they did, but it's kind of cool the way it turned out. Now, what did you have to say, Gemma?
I just wanted to say that when Bonnie went to prison, everyone said that it turned Clyde from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake. But when Bonnie went to prison, it changed her. She got a little bit more hardened, and she definitely blamed Clyde. But this says it wasn't until June that the grand jury met and decided there was no way a woman would participate in a crime voluntarily. So Bonnie must have been under some kind of duress, and no billed her, released her. She had gotten caught up when they had some kind of botched robbery, and Clyde got away, but Bonnie ended up going down and she got arrested, and there was no way a woman would participate in a crime voluntarily, so she was actually let go, and she went right back to Clyde. And one more thing is that Clyde was said to, a little known fact about Clyde is that he was said to have a sixth sense. He could see things happen way before they did. When he was a little boy, he always had visions of his brother getting shot in the eye or the side of the face or something. And that is actually how his brother ended up dying. He had the second sight.
Wow. Amazing.
Is it break time?
I believe so. Let's go ahead and check the chat one more time. Casey, how are you doing tonight? Good to have you with us. Bonnie Plater, I heard Gemma say hi to you, but I don't think I said hi to you. Artie Morgan, Rick Brab, I gave you a quick shout out.
Deborah W., your ex-husband.
Dante Sharp, your ex-husband. Yeah, not my ex-husband. I don't have an Are you kidding
Amateur
me?
Animator, yes. Please catch up on this series. It's a good one. I'm missing from the first episode because I had some family things, but I've been here ever since.
Deborah W., good to have you with us too. Amateur Animator. Mutant Artificial Intelligence. How you doing, buddy? Good to have you. He's another one of my regulars from my overnight streams. And I think we're caught up on the chat. Hopefully everybody's digging the sad saga of Bonnie and Clyde there. It's still fascinating to me. That's got to be my favorite crime couple of all time. The next,
yeah, we could have done an entire
we could do a whole episode on Bonnie and Clyde and just wax poetic about the star-crossed lovers and their life of crime. But we're going to go ahead and take a break here. We're 33 minutes into the show. We started a little late, so we're going to take a break a little late. But stick around. We'll be back right after this. Buy some of this swell merchandise coming up. Show your support for the channel. If you don't want to buy any merch, you can always donate. There's links in the description. It helps the channel stay on the air and continue to bring good things to all the good people that Dezombified have assembled around them. I heard somebody in my chat this morning, Mutant Artificial Intelligence, I think it was you, saying that you had subscribed to or discovered probably over 100 channels because of just the love that Dezombified spreads in the community and turns everybody on to all these different narrators and channels that we might not have ever heard of. So salute Dezombified for all that you guys do. Hats off. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Watch the commercials, kids.
Just let me know when we're back. Oh, guys, I'm really sorry. Steve usually brings us in, but he went to see a man about a dog, so I apologize for the long silence. I'm going to go right into the next one. We're going to be talking about the MoorsMurders, and that's Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. Again, thank goodness I'm me, because I can't stand when I'm listening to a live stream and there's silences. So, the classification, we're going to talk about the birth name of Ian Brady, and it's actually Ian Duncan Stewart, and he's known as the MoorsMurderer. His characteristics are the R word, which we cannot say, and his number of victims are 5. His birthday is January 2nd, 1938, so he is a Capricorn. The location is Greater Manchester, England, in the United Kingdom, which I thought was good to bring in because normally we don't mean to, like we don't do it on purpose, but we always end up covering American cases. And he was sentenced to 3 terms of life imprisonment on May 6th in 1966. And here we have Myra Hindley. She was also known as the MoorsMurderer and the most evil woman in Britain. And I gotta say, I definitely agree. Her date of birth was July 23rd, 1942. She's on the cusp of Cancer and Leo. I could definitely see that. She was sentenced to 2 concurrent life sentences on May 6, 1966, and she died in prison on November 16th, 2002. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Myra Hindley was an English serial killer in partnership with Ian Brady. She committed the R's and murders of 5 small children. And this is what makes this case to me so absolutely despicable. I literally feel like I'm going to regurgitate my Dunkin' Donuts frozen caramel. Hindley's 17-year-old brother-in-law tipped her off to the police. Hindley pled not guilty, of course, but she was found guilty. She was born on July 23rd, 1942 in Manchester, England. She grew up with her grandmother. After the drowning death of a close friend when she was 15, she left school and converted to Catholicism. Wow. In 1961, she met Ian Brady, a stock clerk who was recently released from prison. She fell in love with him and gave herself over to his total control. And when I say gave herself over to his total control, I mean that. I'm going to cover Myra. I figured you can grab Ian. I started with him, but I was like, man, don't want to look at his face.
Yeah.
Testing her blind.
Go ahead.
Testing her blind allegiance, Brady hatched plans of R and murder. In July 1963, they claimed their first victim, Pauline Reade. 4 months later, 12-year-old John Kilbride disappeared, never to be seen again. In June of 1964, 12-year-old Keith Bennett followed. So, boys, on the afternoon of Boxing Day, which is, I found out very recently, thanks to the Harry Potter franchise, Boxing Day is the day after Christmas where you give presents. So Boxing Day, 1964, 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey disappeared from a local fairground. Finally, in October of 1965, police were alerted to the duo by Hindley's 17-year-old brother-in-law, David Smith. Smith had witnessed Brady killing 17-year-old Edward Evans with an axe, concealing his horror for fear of meeting a similar fate. Smith then went to the police with his story, including Brady having mentioned that more bodies were buried on Saddleworth Moor. Hindley and Brady were brought to trial on April 27, 1966, and they both pleaded not guilty. So one thing that I'm not too well versed in this one. The next one I definitely am, but this one, no. I didn't realize it was little boys. The only thing I knew about this was what I've seen on YouTube that other true crime YouTubers have covered, and I was going to cover it myself in kind of a 3-for, like 3, like we're doing tonight in one video, but I don't think I'd be able to do that. So
It's a rough case, and they were, especially him, like you said, she gave herself over to him and went along with whatever he said to do. They idolized the Nazis. He did, and of course she went right along with him. They even went as far as to take photographs, some of them very explicit, of their victims before and after death. They have audio recording of the torture and murder of poor little Leslie Ann Downey. Now, I've never heard the tape. It was considered to be so horrific that it's been permanently sealed in the records at, I guess, Scotland Yard or somewhere. but one time I did get to read a transcript of it, and oh my God, it's horrible. I mean, I'm basically unshockable, and it shocked me.
Right. And from what I heard, even just with it being edited on YouTube, I had one more paragraph and I was going to hand it over to you.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to say, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. The murders reported in almost every English language newspaper in the world were the result of what Malcolm McCullough, professor of forensic psychiatry at Cardiff University, called a concatenation of circumstances, which brought together a, quote, young woman with a tough personality taught to hand out and receive violence from an early age in a sexually sadistic psychopath, end quote.
But yeah, and this guy, I mean, he lived into the 80s. I don't think he died until like 87 or so.
He was declared criminally insane, and he made it clear that he never wanted to be released, and he repeatedly asked that he just be allowed to die. He knew what he was.
Yeah, he even had a female friend on the outside that attempted to smuggle 50 paracetamol tablets into him, which would have been sufficient to kill him. It's basically Tylenol, but you can take 50 Tylenol and it'll shut your liver down. So
we're not recommending anyone does that.
Don't do that. If you're having suicidal thoughts, call a hotline. There are people out there that care about you and help you. Everybody's life is worth something.
Reach out to someone, man.
But he had written an autobiography, but he'd given it to his solicitor that it only be published after his death, but I don't know that it was ever published.
We might have to do a part 2 next week.
Yeah, I'm going to have to catch up on some of these and then go on to the third case, which is more modern and even more spectacular.
Yeah, we may have to, you know what? I mean, I can go tonight. We'll see how far we get, but we may have to continue this next week because I really want to cover these 3.
Yeah, I'd like to dive into this one a little deeper.
Why don't we start? You start off this one. If we don't get to the next one, we'll just pick like one more and we'll do the next one and one more next week and do a part 2.
I wanted to mention a little more about Brady. He did write a book called The Gates of Janus, which was published by the underground American publishing firm Feral House. Adam Parfrey's friend of mine, the guy that runs that. In the book, Brady analyzed serial killers and serial murders, and it sparked outrage when it was announced in Britain. The one sad thing that struck me about it, other than all the other sad things, was that if there had ever been a TV movie or movie adaptation of the case, those of you who are fans of the British TV show The Young Ones, I think the guy, Rick Mayall from The Young Ones, I think he is a dead ringer for the way.
Ooh, that's a good question.
That Brady looked in during that time in the 60s. And one of the other creepy things, they would go back onto the moors and visit places where they had disposed of bodies. There's pictures of them just standing on the moors. And later on, that's what Myra copped to. And she said, well, that's when we went back to visit the graves. And they were just into everything. I mean, anything bad, Brady liked it and drug her into it. He was into the Marquis de Sade, Nietzsche, all those theories. And a lot of this stuff he was into even when he was a teenager. So he was just, real evil. There you go. Boom. Gambling, drinking, the R word. And he was one of these criminals that's what he was meant to be, I think. And the more time he spent in prison or jail, it was an education for him. The more nasty things he had learned while he was in and put those to use when he came out. And we're talking, trivial things like public drunkenness and things like that. But again, he went just, to the extreme. Now, actually, he did work as a laborer for Boddington's Brewery. If you've ever had a Boddington's Ale, which is actually good stuff, that's the one I think it's got a B on the label. But that's just kind of chilling to think about. And you have other people like Jeffrey Dahmer that worked at a candy factory. Ugh.
I know, I can't.
I hope he didn't put anything in the candy. But anyway, you want to go on and just start on the third set here?
Yeah, of course.
We may have to either do a part 2 at some other time or continue it next week.
Yeah, maybe we'll leave y'all on a cliffhanger and come back another time. So Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo, the Ken and Barbie killers. So I'll do the quick rundown on the Murderpedia. I don't have to be that quick. I've got till 9:30 if you guys are hanging out. Her date of birth is May 4th, 1970, which makes her a Taurus. And the thing that struck me with her the most is she handed her little sister over. But Karla Homolka, also known as Karla Leanne Teal and Leanne Bordelaus, she was born in Port Credit, Ontario, Canada. And she is considered a serial killer as well. She was convicted of manslaughter following a plea bargain. And that really grinded my gears when I read that. I'm going to get to her. One of the victims was Karla promised her sister's virginity to her beloved husband, Paul, for Christmas. The horrific acts they performed against their victims were videotaped by the couple in order to relive the fantasies later. And 2 weeks before getting married, they tortured, R-word, and eventually killed 15-year-old Kristen French. The good-looking Canadian couple met in 1987 when Paul Bernardo was 23 and Karla Homolka was 17. The partners in crime committed their first horrific act after having been together for 4 years. Their first crime was R-ing and killing Karla's sister, Tammy, and they were chloroforming, something similar to chloroforming their victims. They did it too much. They gave Tammy too much, and they had to wake up. They did it right in the house with her mother upstairs, and she, feigned innocence, feigned, ignorance. But another serial killer, and Luca Magnotta, put out a fake news story that Karla Homolka was stating that she had dated him, and he actually used her buzz to make his buzz bigger. He was the kitten killer. So, Paul Bernardo. When Paul Bernardo was 15, his mother revealed that Kenneth Bernardo, the man who raised him, was not his real father, and instead he was born as a result of her affair with a former boyfriend. Bernardo was outraged by the fact that he was born as an illegitimate child and started to refer to his own mother as a slut. To make matters worse, she began to call him a bastard. The stepfather, Kenneth, was charged with child's emming and sexually abused Paul's sister. Kenneth was also known to be the peeping Tom of his neighborhood. His wife was depressed over his abusive behavior and withdrew from the family, spending her days in the basement of their Scarborough home. Paul Bernardo was also the Scarborough rapist that came out. Oh, I'm so sorry. The artist. Bernardo soon developed dark fantasies. He also became overly controlling and protective of the women in his life. He enjoyed humiliating women in public and beating them up. What a great guy. This just goes to show you, everyone says it, and I totally agree, that mean guys and mean women and just mean people in general, crazy, killers should have some kind of mark, like a tattoo on their head that says killer. This guy was nice to look at. Not really my type, but nice to look at. Many of Bernardo's victims were underage, and before meeting Karla, he was already a serial R-word, and he had done that to at least 19 girls. And because he carried the axe in and around Scarborough, Ontario, he was named the Scarborough Arist. In contrast to Bernardo, Karla had a good upbringing. Born as the eldest of 3 daughters, she did well in her studies. Her teacher described her as an eager learner and a good student. She worked as a veterinary assistant, and despite being a bit bossy and wanting things to be done her way, nothing in her childhood hinted that she would become one of the most notorious female predators in Canadian history. She's another one. They really do look like Ken and Barbie. They met at a Scarborough restaurant in 1987 while attending a convention. The attraction between the two devils was immediate. Unlike other women Bernardo knew, Karla encouraged his sadistic behavior, perhaps having hybristophilia and his fantasies towards women. Bernardo spent a lot of time with Karla's family, who genuinely cherished him as their son-in-law, and at the same time, he became obsessed with the youngest daughter, Tammy. Bernardo would regularly peep into Tammy's window and do things to her while she was sleeping. And I just don't get this, maybe because I'm not a sick psycho, how he was telling her, like, oh, you're old now, when she was like 21, and being like, I need someone younger who looks like you. You know what I mean? Like, he completely convinced her that this would be a good idea. She finally did admit to it. I've actually seen clips of the tapes, and I can't even tell you where to go look. Little clips, not the whole thing. I can't find them. I have looked because I'm curious.
It's just such a sick situation. One of the things.
Diary, one more thing. In her diary, Karla wrote, "Never let anyone know our relationship is anything but perfect. Don't talk back to Paul. Be a perfect girlfriend for Paul. If Paul asks for a drink, bring him one quickly and happily with a smile on my face. Remember that you're stupid. Remember you're ugly. Remember you're fat. I don't know why I tell you these things, Karla, because you never change."
Wow. Just totally fed into his narcissism and gave herself over to it fully.
That's probably what he was telling her.
And after the things that went on with her sister, that was just the most astounding part to me, that that even her own blood relative like that she would just, and
Her
she said that
sister.
she wanted to give Tammy, her sister's virginity, to Bernardo for Christmas because, according to Karla, Bernardo was disappointed by not having been Karla's first sex partner. So while the parents were sleeping upstairs, the pair filmed themselves as they took advantage of this girl in the basement after she had been administered sleeping pills and rum and eggnog cocktail. However, she started to throw up. She aspirated the vomit, and they tried to revive her, but not before they hid the evidence and dressed her and put her in the basement bedroom.
They both took part, by the way.
Yeah, they both in the assault on the sister. That's just too disgusting to even think about. And a few hours later, unfortunately, Tammy Homolka was pronounced dead at St. Catherine's General Hospital without ever having regained consciousness.
Do you see this? 3 weeks after Tammy's death, Karla and Bernardo filmed a video called The Fireside Chat.
Oh, no. Do we have to change the name of our chat now?
In the tape, Karla's dressed up in Tammy's clothing, acting like her, and admits to Bernardo that she enjoyed it. The couple eventually had sex on Tammy's bed. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that just stood out to me, the Fireside Chat.
Yeah, I got it from Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
I know, it's just,
probably,
wow.
They're not the first people to ever have a fireside chat, but that is kind of odd that they would pick that thing. But yeah, these are obviously some sick MFers would be the nicest way I could probably say it. Yeah, just I'm almost at a loss for words here. And it goes on and on with the other sexual assaults and the videotapes. And it was a big deal in Canada. The judge issued a gag order. They weren't allowed. Nobody was allowed to talk about the case. And this was in the mid 90s when the internet was still pretty much in its infancy, fledgling as far as everybody having it and having access to it. And I know a lot of Canadians would go on to American websites and in American chat rooms and ask for the latest news because they couldn't get it in their own country. But ended up Bernardo's trial for the murders of French and Mahaffy took place in 1995. That's when they included the detailed testimony from Karla and the videotapes of the sexual assaults, which were played in the courtroom. That was
she
one
had
of
her
the
plea bargain before they found those tapes, and she said that she was, not really complicit in it, that she was forced by him. And they gave her the plea bargain, they gave her the deal, and then found the tapes showing that she was a full-blown partner, but there was nothing they can do about it. They could not renege. And that's why people hate her so much more, because she got off.
She got 12 years in prison for manslaughter. Manslaughter. There was some comedian that used to do a routine about that. But she did testify against Bernardo in his murder trial. And yeah, the criticism, her first defense lawyer, Ken Murray, withheld those tapes for 17 months just to make sure that his client, I mean, he did good by his client, but, I don't know how good that was. He was later, the attorney was later charged with obstruction of justice. Although he was acquitted, he did face a disciplinary hearing from the Law Society, which, smack on the wrist. And during her initial interrogation in 93, Homolka told police Bernardo once bragged to her that he had assaulted as many as 30 women, double the 15 assaults police had suspected him of. He was described as a happy sexual assaultist by Karla. And he'd been kept in segregation unit at the penitentiary for his own safety. Nonetheless, he had been attacked and harassed. He'd been punched in the face, in the shower. 5 convicts tried to storm the segregation unit where he was, and a riot squad had to use gas to disperse them. So old Paulie wasn't a very popular guy in prison. And he gave an interview in prison in 2006 suggesting that he had reformed and would make a good parole candidate. Now, he was eligible, I think, for release in 2010 under the faint hope clause that they have there in Canada, which that's usually reserved for people convicted of multiple murders, meaning you ain't getting out. He's currently serving his term in the maximum security prison at Kingston Penitentiary, still in the segregation unit. He spends 23 hours a day in an 8x4 jail cell. But now Karla, on the other hand, she was released from prison on July 4th, 2005. And according to her lawyer, Bernardo's lawyer, Tony Bryant, Bernardo claimed that he had always intended to free the girls that he and Homolka had kidnapped, but it was Karla's insistence that they be killed. And he mentioned one incident where Mahaffy, when her blindfold fell off and allowed her to see Bernardo's face, Karla was the one that's saying that, well, since she can identify you, we need to kill her. And Karla had planned to kill her by injecting an air bubble into her bloodstream, causing an embolism. Now, again, this was
how much
Bernardo
air you'd have to put. I'm a recovering addict. You know how much air you'd have to put.
It's a lot. When you see this on the
I was
movies,
always scared of that.
little
and
air
people were
bubble,
like,
but no.
dumb.
I know somebody that actually, no, I won't go into it, but they tried it and it didn't work. They got a busting headache, but they recovered. Maybe it's just, certain things, certain time, but I think that's a movie trope or something. But
yeah, because I was always very, very scared of that. But yeah, so she's dumb. We already knew that, though.
But I guess that just goes to show you. I've got more here. We could go on and on about this case. There's been reams about it. There's been films. There's been books. There's all kinds of YouTube videos. There's a Law and Order episode called Fools for Love. And then 2 Law and Order Special Victims Unit episodes, Pure and Damaged, are based on these events. And then in Great Britain, Series 7 of the Inspector Lindley Mysteries, Know Thine Enemy, is based on this. And I think another cool thing here, Kristen French, who was one of Bernardo's victims, is paid tribute to in a song, Nobody's Hero, by Canadian progressive rock band Rush. If anybody Rush fans in the audience.
I can do a little bit more about
R.I.P. Neil Peart. Yeah, go ahead if you want to cover a little bit more of that. It's one of those that there's so many different things and so many different ways to go that we could fill up an hour just on these two.
It's a little hard with the crimes. I forget there are certain words I can't say, and I do apologize for that slip. But all right, as a couple, we're talking about Myra Hindley and Ian Brady right now. In January 1961, the 18-year-old Hindley joined Millwards as a typist. She soon became infatuated with Brady despite learning that he had a criminal record. And back then, that was kind of like a no, you don't go and date men with criminal records. I mean, you really shouldn't now either, depending on what the record is. Hindley began a diary, and although she had dates with other men, some of the entries detail her fascination with Brady, to whom she eventually spoke for the first time on the 27th of July. Over the next few months, she continued to make entries, but grew increasingly disillusioned with him until the 22nd of December when Brady asked her on a date to the cinema. Their dates followed a regular pattern: a trip to the movies, usually to watch an X-rated film, then back to Hindley's house to drink German wine. Brady then gave her reading material, and the pair spent their work lunch breaks reading aloud to one another from accounts of Nazi atrocities. Hindley began to emulate an ideal of Aryan perfection, bleaching her hair blonde and applying thick crimson lipstick. Is that what happens when I'm wearing my blonde wig on my channel with my red lipstick?
You become Myra Hindley.
She expressed concern at some aspects of Brady's character. In a letter to her childhood friend, she mentioned an incident where she had been drugged by Brady, but also wrote of her obsession with him. A few months later, she asked her friend to destroy the letter. In her 30,000-word plea for parole written in 1978 and 1979 and submitted to Home Secretary Marilyn Reese, Hindley said, "Within months, he," meaning Brady, "had convinced me that there was no God at all. He could have told me that the earth was flat, the moon was made of green cheese, and the sun rose in the west. I would have believed him. Such was his powers of persuasion." Hindley began to change her appearance further, wearing clothing considered risque, such as high boots, short skirts, and leather jackets. I wear all three at the same time. Try me on. And the two became less sociable to their colleagues. The couple were regulars at the library, borrowing books on philosophy as well as crime and torture. They also read books by the Marquis de Sade, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Fyodor Dostoevsky, I don't know how to say it, Crime and Punishment. Although Hindley was not a qualified driver, she passed her test after failing 3 times. She often hired a van in which the couple planned bank robberies. Hindley befriended George Clitheroe, the president of the Cheadle Rifle Club, and on several occasions visited 2 local shooting ranges. He was puzzled by Myra's interest, but he arranged for her to buy a .22 rifle from a gun merchant. She also wanted to join a pistol club. As murderers, Hindley claimed that Brady began to talk about committing the perfect murder in July of 1963 and often spoke to her about Myra Levin's Compulsion, published as a novel in 1956 and adapted for the movies in 1959. That's the Leopold and Loeb story. By June 1963, Brady had moved in with Hindley at her grandmother's house in Bannock Street, and on July 12th, the two murdered their first victim, Pauline Reade, who had attended school with Hindley's younger sister, Maureen, and had also been in a short relationship with David Smith, a local boy with 3 criminal convictions for minor crimes. Police found no one who had seen Reade before her disappearance, and although the 15-year-old Smith was questioned by police, he was cleared of any involvement. And they just, on and on with the murders. They killed a lot of people, too. Their arrest. Smith agreed to return the following... Okay, here it is. Sorry, I got confused. Initial analysis. Though Hindley was not initially arrested, she demanded to go with Brady to the police station and even took her dog with her. She refused to make any statement about Evans's death beyond claiming it had been an accident. That was one of their victims, and allowed to go home on the condition that she returned the next day. Scout's honor. Over the next 4 days, Hindley visited her employer and asked to be dismissed so that she would be eligible for unemployment benefits. On one of these occasions, she found an envelope belonging to Brady, which she burned in an ashtray. She claimed she did not open it, but believed it contained plans for bank robberies. On October 11th, she too was arrested and taken into custody, being charged as an accessory to the murder of Evans, and was remanded at HM Prison Risley. Police searching the house at Wardlebrook Avenue found an old exercise book with the name John Kilbride, which made them suspect that Brady and Hindley had been involved in the disappearances of other youngsters. Brady told police that he and Evans had fought, but insisted that he and Smith had murdered Evans and that Hindley had only done what she had been told to do. Smith said that Brady had asked him to return anything incriminating, such as dodgy books, which Brady then packed into suitcases. He had no idea what else the suitcases contained or where they might be, though he mentioned that Brady had a thing about railway stations. A search of left luggage offices turned up what else the suitcases contain. Suitcases at Manchester Central Railway Station on October 15th. The claimed ticket was later found in Hindley's prayer book. Inside one of the cases, among an assortment of costumes, notes, photographs, and negatives, 9 pornographic photographs taken of Downey naked with, I'm not going to get into details. There was a girl identifying herself as Leslie and Weston. She was screaming, crying, and pleading to be allowed to return home to her mama. Downey's mother later confirmed that the recording was of her daughter. Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. Officers making inquiries at neighboring houses spoke to 12-year-old Patricia Hodges, who had on several occasions been taken to Saddleworth Moor by Brady and Hindley and was able to point out their favorite sites along the A635 road. So they were bringing other kids to the moors where they had, murdered other children. Do you have anything else to say before we start closing down?
Yeah. They talked about they would even have picnics in the moors, sometimes sitting on the graves. They'd have children with them brought for picnic on the graves of other people they'd killed and buried on the moors. They were just,
That's how they got found out.
It was him, just beyond sick. I mean, in the very first episode, it talked about Albert Fish and some of those guys. Now, he was something else, especially for that time and era. But I think Brady, given enough time, if he had lived to be Fish's age, I think he would have surpassed him as far as just pure evil, real evil.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. Oh, boy.
But I'm going to have to go watch some kitten videos or something.
Yeah, seriously. I'm going to go hug my son. So I just want to talk about, I guess, when we close it down, things coming up on our channels.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So as I wrote in the chat earlier, I am going to be releasing 2 short videos, one on near-death experiences and one on feral wild men in the Smokies. And one of them's in with my patrons right now. And if you guys like that content, I know most of you are subscribed to my channel. If you are not subscribed to my channel, please go and subscribe. I'm still trying to get my first 1,000. So I always put a link to one of these in my description box. Whichever one I come across, I just pop it in there because they're all amazing. I love doing this show. I met so many awesome people in the chat here too. So yeah, I'm doing those two, but I wanted to talk for a minute about, I've been mentioning it on Fireside Chat, Campfire Tales, even here, Caleb Smith. The case of Caleb Smith and Keeslyn Roberts. Keeslyn Roberts' family declined to participate in the podcast. It's going to be just about Caleb, and Keeslyn gets most of the publicity anyway because she has not been found. But if you see my video on Caleb Smith and Keeslyn Roberts, most of that information, despite my fact checking to 4 or 5 back sources, most of the information is wrong. So that means most of the information out there is wrong. So I had Caleb's mother, who I've become, she's like a sister to me. She was actually born on the same exact day as my sister. And I want to help her. So she went through that video and got everything that was wrong and corrected it for me. So I'm going to be putting out a new video just about Caleb. I might mention Keeslyn a little bit because I kind of have to, but just about Caleb with the correct and proper information, and forget everything else that you've heard. It's even worse than what you heard. I don't think a 21-year-old having a drug problem means that a murder, or at the very least complicity, or hiding a body, should be acceptable. And that's exactly what's going on. So I'm going to release this video. Then Steve and I are going to have April, Caleb's mom, on as a guest on one of our live streams. And then we're going to be doing about a 12-episode podcast of what happened to Caleb Smith, justice for Caleb Smith, and try to put up some kind of fundraiser somewhere to get that family money for a private investigator, because it's not fair that the mother of a deceased 21-year-old who, yeah, he had a problem with the drugs, but how many 21-year-olds don't experiment? You know what I mean? It's not fair and it's not right. Yeah. No humans involved.
Just because he they don't even know that he had a drug problem. He might just have been experimenting.
Well,
but regardless of how he died, that's somebody's child. You don't just say, "Oh, well, he's a drug addict. He died. Sorry." Case closed.
His mother should not be going out and chasing down leads the way that she is and finding out the things that she's finding out. It's not fair. No mother should ever have to do that. She is so torn up. She has other kids at home. Her daughter might be getting into Harvard. I mean, it can happen to anybody. When I tell people I was an addict for 6 years, they do not believe me a lot of the time. And it's frustrating because I definitely was. I have a heart for addicts, both in active addiction and in recovery. That's why Hot Mess Recovery is 2 weeks late, but it is coming next week. I am filming the first video for it tomorrow. So I just wanted to let you guys know to please support me, support Steve in that endeavor. It's really important to his mother. She is backing us through the entire thing, the entire way. And we need to get the truth out there. It's just not fair. I have a 21-year-old son. My other son is turning 20 on Friday. I can't even imagine the mistakes that I made when I was 21, not getting to live through them and learn from them. So guys, when you see Caleb Smith's name, please jump right on it, support it. This family needs help.
Yeah, indeed. Such a miscarriage of justice. After the body had been found, everything, they turned his car over to his parents or his family without doing any forensics on it.
He was found 5 miles away from his car, laying in a marsh with clean feet and naked.
Yeah. The mother, as far as I know, she never got to see the body, yet I think it was the cook at the Denny's in the truck stop had pictures of the body on their cell phone. Now that is just so effed up. They wouldn't let the mother see the body, but other people that have absolutely nothing to do with the case, other than might have been complicit in the actual murder, since whatever happened there at that truck stop. Somebody there, a cook, has pictures of the body on the cell phone. Yeah, there definitely need to be some private investigation going on there.
There's a lot there. I didn't want to get into too much detail because we don't know exactly. We could write a novel just with the information that April has given us, and some of it she decided she didn't want out, and some she did. But please, if you see Caleb Smith on my channel, any channel involving Steve and I, we're getting the actual information from his mother. So I feel bad that my video and even the script I wrote for MPNM, it has false information in it. But guys, when I do a video, I back my sources at least to 4 points. I mean, I go back and make sure that multiple credible sources have this information. I put information that came from credible news sources, and it was wrong information. I believe his mother. She has proof. I've listened to the autopsy. I mean, it's horrifying. So,
well, that was what she said. CNN got it wrong. Fox got it wrong.
Yes.
All these major news outlets.
Because they're going by what the police are telling them. How does a man, a 21-year-old kid, get 5 miles away from his car with no clothes on, found in a muddy, dirty marsh area, and his feet are pristine?
They thought it was a mannequin at first. He was that clean that they thought it was a mannequin.
Yes. So I'm going to head out. I'm going to close myself out. I love you guys so much. Be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything to make you feel so good. Let your kindness show, because it is just absolutely beautiful. Have your best day. Have your best night. And please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Check out my new videos. One will be posted tomorrow. The next one on Monday. And I just really appreciate you all. So, all right. Thanks, Dezombified. And Steve, I'll talk to you in a minute.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Gemma. Wouldn't be the same without you. We do such a good job together. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Dezombified for letting us be here. Like I was telling Kenny before the show, this is one of the few streams I have where I can just sit back and talk, which is what I enjoy more than anything. Usually I'm an engineer and head cook and bottle washer for whatever I've got going on. But this way, it's just nice to sit and talk, and even nice to sit and listen to Gemma interact in real time. But she is a peach, and we've got a lot of good things coming up, something for everybody, literally. I've got a new book that's coming out. I don't have an exact date yet. It will be toward the Messenger, if you could pop that on screen. If you can't this time, I understand. There's no problem there. We'll get to it in the next episode. And I want to make sure they changed the title around a little bit. But it's a series, National Park Mysteries and Disappearances, Volume 1, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And so that's probably going to be out around the end of the month. That's my 5th paranormal book that I've written, including the one that I co-wrote with Cisco Murdoch. So, and then Gemma and I are working on not 1, but 2 books, maybe even 3. So watch for that. Coming probably next month or so on the first one. And as always, check me out on Missing. There you go. There's the book cover. I think they did an excellent job on that. My publisher sent me that. That's just the front cover. I got the other proof today of the front and the back. It looks great. I got the uncorrected proof, and I went over that. Everything looks good. And really excited for this one. And like I said, it's going to be a series. Volume 2 is going to be not just one national park in specific. I may decide to make a volume out of the Great Smoky Mountains because that's where I'm from. It's where I'm very familiar with. And it's also the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. A lot of people don't know this or realize it. That's the most visited national park in the country. Last year, even with everything that was going on, it garnered 12.2, I think, million visitors, which was more than any other park. The next volume will be California, to include several parks: Yosemite, Joshua Tree, and Mount Shasta. So be on the lookout for that. Again, join me on Missing Persons and Mysteries. We've got a show coming up Friday, Campfire Stories. I'm not sure who our guests are going to be yet. Dylan, I think it's going to be you, but I've got to double check on that. We're also going to be the guest on Dylan and Sabrina's Unsolved or Creepy Unsolved podcast, so watch for that. And then Sunday, Jim and I will be on Missing Persons and Mysteries with our fireside chat. A little bit different than Homolka and Bernardo's, though. We're not going to do anything too weird, but join us for that Sunday. In the meantime, you can always join me on 13 past midnight, every night at midnight Pacific time for Ghost Stories at Midnight, and on KPNL Radio's new YouTube channel. I do the Morning Chill 5 days a week, Ritual Radio, which is goth and industrial music, on Saturday nights. Sunday, we do old time radio, a little bit of something all over the place. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here because I know Gemma's waiting on me. But you folks have a good evening. Again, thank you for watching, listening, subscribing, subscribe, share, get this out there. We like being on Dezombified, want to stay on here. Buy some merch. contribute to the channel. Donate. Can't donate? Do what you're doing now. Watch, like, share, subscribe. All right. Good night, everybody. I will see you at midnight on 13 past midnight. Steve Stockton, on behalf of Gemma and myself, love each and every one of you. Mwah. I'll talk to you next time. Good night, Jenny.
Bye.
Good night, Puddin'.